Well, welcome back. It is so good to have you back with us. I hope that you are even a little bit as excited as I am about the return to school properly. The place has been very lonely, very empty without you, and we've all been looking forward to you returning. And thank you for making the effort to be back with us and for joining us, new students. Assemblies we would normally have together in one of the big sports halls, and we come together, and the purpose of them is to share our values, to share our achievements, and to share our sense of community. Today is a little bit different, of course, it has to be, but it's the same purpose. I want us to share our values together today, both students and staff, as we move forward into the 2020-2021 academic year, which is going to be a good one. Not without its challenges, I'm sure, but there are always challenges, but it will be a good one, and it will be good because we are doing this together. So during this assembly, you're going to hear my reflections on one or two achievements. You'll hear my philosophy for the year ahead, which I will expect us all to follow, please. And you will also hear from our head boy and our head girl. So, Concordians, this is what I'm expecting. Well, the first theme that I feel is going to be so important to us this year, and always is, to be honest, is kindness. I really do think that kindness is the beating heart of Concord, and honestly, it's kindness is what makes the world a better place, and its absence makes the world much, much smaller and just intolerant, to be honest. So kindness relates to the whole sense of mental health as well. That we must, of course, look after our physical health. We need to eat healthily, we need to socially distance, we need to wash our hands, all of these things. Be sensible in this COVID world with our physical health. But of course, our mental health is just as important. And each of us has a sort of a level of strain beyond which we can't cope. We are all brittle to a greater or lesser extent, and recognizing that is a strength, not a weakness. So do remember that. But I think the bedrock of developing our mental health and nurturing our mental health is kindness. Now, kindness is not the same as niceness. Niceness is kind of being a little bit, pleasant to be around. Someone who is always thinking how others perceive them. Someone who maybe takes the easy route to popularity. It's kind of nice, it's nice. It's like a sugary bar of chocolate, it's quite pleasant, but is it doing us any good? Once in a while, absolutely niceness is a good thing. But in the longer term, I think it is not as strong as kindness. So kindness, to my mind, is showing strength. It's having the ability to say no. An example I've used before is, for instance, somebody who might be building up more and more debt in their lives. They're owing more and more money. The nice thing to do would be to lend them a bit more money to get them out of a short-term problem. The kind thing to do would be to actually work with them to change their lifestyle. And you can think of many other examples where somebody may be asking you, for something to feed an addiction, where in the short term, it would be nice to make them feel a bit better by giving them something else which helps them to feed their addiction. But the kind thing to do is to say no. What you actually need is much tougher. What you actually need is to stop that behavior, and I will help you do it. You can apply that same sense of kindness to yourselves. I do to myself. I am an old man. I still try and drag my old body out running fairly regularly to keep the body moving, to keep my physical fitness. I don't enjoy it, but I know that it's a sensible thing to do. And it gets harder and harder, but it doesn't mean it's without value. You'll find this in different parts of your life. When you are trying to work and you know you're going to need to work, sometimes you need to work harder than you have before. Sometimes also you need to know when to stop because you need to get some sleep. Remember to eat properly. That's the kind thing to do. So do think about being kind to others. There's a lot of science behind this. It's not simply an ethical issue, a human issue. The science is suggesting that by being kind to others, we enrich our own well-being. Yes, it's actually been found by psychological researchers that if one is kind and meets kindness, that it's a predictor of satisfaction and stability in relationships. So if you're involved in a relationship, kindness from both sides can make that relationship longer and stronger. And actually, many top universities, particularly the best example I could find was Harvard, emphasize kindness in their application process because they are recognizing that societies need kindness. So, students, colleagues, let us be kind this year to each other, considerate towards each other, and look after each other so that each of us, as a result, can become stronger and then our community can become greater.
Hello everyone, my name is Lewis.
My name is Hannah, and we are your head prefects.
We hope that you have been enjoying your experience in Concord so far.
It is not the kind of Concord first week experience that we expected. Maybe you've been planning to come here for a while and have been looking forward to an experience a bit different to what is happening right now. If someone had told me last year that we would all be starting this year in quarantine, I certainly would not have believed them. But here we are, and at least we are here. This quarantine season will pass, but let's make it the best that we can within the boundaries we have.
Concord upholds an eminent reputation of an academically ambitious school with brilliant young minds. On top of that, we also treasure student diversity in broader fields of interest and individuality. Despite the competitiveness in the studying environment, we should always maintain a healthy mentality with a balanced lifestyle, making sure that you get your respite from your daily grind. For example, participating in house events or just like chilling with friends, making sure that you work hard but also play hard.
Those of you who have been here a while will already be familiar with the Concord ethos of rigor, creativity, and kindness. We would like to briefly remind you of these as we start the year together.
The first pillar of our ethos is rigor. This simply refers to being thorough in your work and doing your best out of respect of both yourself and those around you. Rigor rewards you with a self-satisfaction, knowing that what you have achieved is of your own merit. It doesn't always mean that you'll be the top of the form, but it means that you'll be that much closer to fully realizing your potential.
Secondly, creativity. And I'm not just talking about your art classes. Creativity is the ability to think outside the box, to have unusual ideas, not being satisfied with what is already in existence, but striving for something new, improved, something more. It is this creativity that can solve a lot of complex problems. That is why it is so important that we don't forget to be creative in times of uncertainty. This year, may be full of new problems that many of us have never faced before. It is easy to complain. It is not easy to use that brain power to try and solve things. However, I'd like to challenge you all. If you ever find yourself in a position where you're complaining or grumbling, I challenge you to motivate yourself to find a creative solution to that problem. We are fortunate here in Concord to have such a bright student body. Each and every one of you is smart, and you have each been chosen to be part of Concord. You are all, therefore, capable of finding creative solutions. So let's face any challenges that this year may bring us with this weapon called creativity. Last but not least, kindness.
We usually associate the word kindness with being caring and friendly, and oftentimes we confuse this with being nice. This isn't to say that the two aren't similar, but a notable distinction to make between the two is that being kind can sometimes hurt. Tough love. Kindness also entails being honest with yourself and with the people around you. Though white lies may be nice, this isn't kindness. Kindness is also about letting people acknowledge their own strengths and weaknesses so that they can become better humans, and that's what we should treasure the most.
I also want to challenge us all to be responsible for our actions and to deliberately choose what will have a positive and kind effect on those around us. Online or offline, let's choose our words carefully. Let's be considerate and protect each other, our teachers, and other staff by being clever, not COVIDians. Different people will be nervous about different things. Look out for others and help wherever you can. Just a smile can be more encouraging than you realize, even if it's with a mask on. Random and creative acts of kindness can make Concord a much brighter place, even in the middle of a pandemic.
Thank you for listening, and we hope you have a brilliant year.
The second of my core values for the year is the one which I think you will probably expect. And that is rigor. Rigor. The willingness to push oneself to a place that you've not been before. To believe that you can be more than you are, and to work really hard in pursuit of that goal. So rigor. I've been looking at some really interesting research over the last couple of years. And this is research done in the UK, which has been trying to show how and why some students are more successful than others. And, you know, it's easy to think, well, it's the teachers. And actually, good teaching does help. Definitely, and you're going to get some fantastic teaching here at Concord. But it isn't actually good teaching which is the number one in terms of making a difference. One might think that it's parental background. You know, do your parents and their socioeconomic level and their support, does that make the biggest difference? And again, the answer to that is no, it can make a difference, but it's not the biggest single factor. Then therefore, maybe it's ability. You know, if you're just a bit clever, or, you know, you've just got massive a talent, then maybe it's that. But actually, it certainly isn't that sense of ability that's the number one determinant. The number one, the most important factor in overperforming, in you achieving more than you think or your parents think or even perhaps that we think, is your commitment. It's your willingness to strive and to push yourself in ways that you've not yet done. Because by taking on challenges that you've not taken on before, you're not just training yourself to do different things, but you are actually stimulating your brain in ways that it's not been used to, and you're developing and building synapses within your brain. And when you're young, that's when you can build your brain the most. It is like building a muscle. You know, you can build a muscle by exercise, by practice, and similarly with your mind. So what you have been intellectually is not what you can be. What you can be is in your hands. And I am expecting from you, each of you, hard work, determination, and commitment. Because you, Concordians, are Olympians. You are Olympians of the mind. You know, if you don't, none of us think it strange that an Olympic athlete trains hard, works hard on their physical fitness, their mental strength, that they sleep well, that they eat well, and that they make sacrifices for the great, for their performance. And that's the way to think of yourself. You're special. You are in this wonderful school which has a long history of success, and you are part of that success. That means you please think of ways in which you can stretch yourself, challenge yourself, and become more than you are. And don't be surprised when your teachers expect great things of you, when your teachers are rigorous, when your teachers challenge you, because that's what we're here for, to help you to grow and to change. So, good luck with that challenge. Rigor is my expectation of you. Well, I've moved over to my office partly to give you a different sense of the school, and this is somewhere which, on the whole, you only come for good reasons or not. And I hope I'll get to see many of you in here over the course of the year for good reasons. But I wanted to offer a few thanks. I'd like to thank the staff who've worked tirelessly to get the school ready for opening. I'd like to thank the prefects and the monitors who've worked really hard in the last few days to help to welcome new students particularly to the community. And they've had to be really creative this year in the way that they've gone about that. So thank you so much to you. I'd like also to welcome some new members of the teaching staff. We have Miss Dentith joining us. And in fact, she joined us in the summer term, but because of the lockdown, I don't think no student will have met her face to face. So Miss Dentith joins the art department. Mr. Briers joins the economics department. Mr. Vargos joins the physics department. Mr. Williams returns to us and rejoins the school after a time at Shanghai Concord Bilingual School. So Mr. Williams rejoins the economics department, and Mrs. Mott is joining the biology department for the term. We also welcome back Mr. Vo to the foreign languages department and as head of PSHE. And I'd also like to congratulate Dr. Beard on his appointment as head of chemistry and Mr. Grant on his appointment as head of economics. Moving on, we had A-level and GCSE and AS level grades published this year. You'll be aware that this was a different year, and there's been a lot of press about the grades, but I am really proud of the grades that our students have been awarded. At A-level, the leavers were awarded 85% of grades at A star or A and 96% at A star to B, which is really remarkable. Most important is not the grades themselves, but is the doors that those grades have opened. And as a result of that, students are getting into, achieved their offers at some really fantastic universities. Probably the highlights, I mean, we have many students going on to Cambridge, some to Oxford, many to Imperial, to LSE. But I would like to highlight the fact we have 37 students this year going on to University College London. And in total, we have 41 students who will either be attending a medical course, a veterinary course, or a dentistry course, which is just, well, it is a record number for Concord and astounding in the context of such a competitive course. And obviously, I'm sure you'll join with me in wishing them well on that next stage of their lives. Put a different way, 48% of our students got into UK top 5 universities or into medical school, and an incredible 90% of our leavers have got into UK top 20 or universities or into medical school. 90%, which is really special. So for you, young people, as you're thinking about your futures and why you're doing what you're doing, that's part of the path. Part of the path is to open those doors in your futures. AS level, well done. Well done to the new 6.2s. You achieved, you were awarded commendable grades. And GCSE as well, fantastic grades. 88% of our IGCSE and GCSE grades were graded at 7 or above, which is, A star or A in different parlance. So really super congratulations to you. I'd like to highlight the following 10 students who've achieved 10 grade 9s or more. They are Sushant Amanath, Evelyn Jennings, Chloe Nicole Lowe, Kishen Tivendran, Ryan Bowie, Sophia Wan, Sienna Dudley, Barney Cansdale, Maggie Miao, and Xing Lok So. Really congratulations to those students. You will be awarded a continuation scholarship in recognition of that achievement. Well done. We now have a little piece of music, and I'm so grateful to Nico and to Davon, who recorded this piece, which is a duet. They recorded it when Nico was in Hong Kong and Davon was in Indonesia. And when you bear this in mind, as you see their hands working, that it's an incredible achievement. So enjoy the music. I always think that music dusts off our souls. So allow the music to do a little bit of that before I move on to my final thoughts. I wanted to finish the assembly on the theme of, well, it's kind of mystery, really, but actually, I suppose, linked to that is creativity. And I want to talk about where European eels come from. The European eel is a truly fascinating creature. But I've got a couple of stories to share. And the first is from 1876. A young man in Trieste, in Austria, would go down to the dock every day and meet the fishermen coming in, and he would buy their catches of eels, and each day he'd buy a few more eels and a few more eels. And what he did more and more obsessively was to take them back to his house and to dissect them. And what he was doing, and he did this first of all to tens and then to 50 or 60 in a day, and then literally hundreds of eels in a day, was he was searching for an eel's reproductive organs, searching for how on earth eels actually bred. Now, interesting in itself, but that man was Sigmund Freud. It was one of his first scientific explorations. And the eel has fascinated generations, millennia of thinkers. The ancient Egyptians believed that the eel was produced by the sun warming the river Nile. Aristotle believed that eels were produced when rainwater hit mud, and in some way they just suddenly materialized. Pliny the Elder, who's a Roman thinker, thought that eels were produced when mature eels rubbed their bodies on rocks and then bits were sort of fell off and a new eel was formed. And it goes on and on and on. Lots and lots of traditions of where did eels come from. In the UK here, in the sort of 18th century, 17th century, people were convinced that eels were produced when horse hairs, the horse tail hairs, fell off a horse and fell into water, and they became eels. So this mystery about where eels came from is extraordinary. Of course, over the last century or so, a little bit longer actually, 130, 140 years, people have begun to understand the life cycle of the eel a little bit more clearly. And actually what we have found is that eels go through four changes, four metamorphoses in their lives, from being sort of little like tadpole-like creatures with huge eyes and long tails. Then they turn into little slivery, tiny little worm-like creatures that can, go through the sea. Then they become a yellowy brown eel of a more recognizable form, slightly bigger. And finally, they become actually a really very powerful, strong creature made up of almost pure muscle in that fourth cycle of their lives. And what has been discovered is that eels actually, as Sigmund Freud found, do not possess reproductive organs in their first phase of life, their second phase of life, or their third phase of life. What they've discovered is they only develop those in the final phase of their lives, when they are this incredibly muscled creature, and they make an incredible journey. The European eel makes the journey from Europe across the Atlantic Ocean to not far away from Jamaica, from the West Indies area, where they head for the Sargasso Sea. And these eels, during that journey, eat nothing, their intestines disappear, and in the place of their intestines come their reproductive organs. An incredible thing, an incredible mystery that's taken thousands of years for humanity to unravel, and for the European eel to find where its breeding ground, well, maybe not its breeding ground, but where they go. And actually the American eel does the same thing. It ends up in the Sargasso Sea. The Japanese eel actually has a similar thing in the Pacific. So, fascinating. And the Sargasso Sea itself is an area that's just bordered by currents. That's what makes it into a distinct sea. It has different currents around it. And eels, the European eel, seems to breed there. But the mystery is not over, even with that discovery. So, the mystery continues, because what we know is that the little seal tadpole type things, which I'm sure have got a technical name, do appear to begin their lives in the Sargasso Sea. And many expeditions scientific expeditions have attempted to trace mature eels from Europe to the Sargasso Sea. They've put GPS trackers on them. They have injected female eels with hormones to try to lure males to see if they can see them breeding. Lots and lots of things. But until this day, no one has yet seen a European eel mating anywhere, or even set eyes on a mature eel in the Sargasso Sea. So there's this sense of how do the little eels begin their lives in the Sargasso Sea when the mature eels don't appear to go there. Another mystery which is now unfortunately befalling the European eel is that their numbers have dropped by 95% in the last 50 years. Again, nobody's quite sure why. We can all speculate that it could well be to do with pollution, changing human habits, maybe damming rivers, whatever it is. But the numbers are falling. And this is now yet another mystery which the European eel, is throwing up. But actually, the most extraordinary thing about the eel is something which touches on something much more philosophical. Because the life cycle of the eel, those 4 phases in its life, can take anything from just a few very short years, 3 years, 7 years, right the way up to 60 years, 70 years. There's even an example which is called, I think, called the Brantevik eel, of an eel living in phase 3 of its life in a well in Sweden for 150 years. And the fascinating thing is that in terms of their physical bodies, those eels that are in that 3rd phase, whether they're 5 years old or 15 years old or 60 years old, have a rather similar, they don't appear to age. Their aging process is different. Until they reach that 4th phase, when they have become muscle and their intestines are disappearing, they have kind of gone into a stasis in time. And that, I think, is really interesting, because you're then into this question of what is time? You know, is the way we perceive time actually better than the way an eel perceives time? Now, I know, of course, that's a silly question in some ways, but their experience of time is completely different to ours. And they're just one species, one example amongst so many, but probably quite a good one to illustrate my point. So, have a look at, if you wish to, at these eels. They are really interesting. But my real point to you, young people, is that we must always question what it is we are seeing and what it is we are experiencing and what it is that we are hearing. To be questioning, one must be creative. Because if we simply accept what we are told at all times, we would never have advanced from Aristotle's view that eels suddenly materialize. And yet we all think of Aristotle as a wise person. But because others have been willing to question, others have been creative, that is how we develop as individuals, but also how humanity has developed over time. That, I think, is the real challenge of education for you, for you and for all of us as a society as we move forward, this year and the years ahead. So, enjoy your year, be kind, be rigorous, and be creative.